So, already a member of the Department of Infrastructure, you've now taken on an extra responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, if you could, what your new role entails.
So, as you correctly say, Dollin, I'm already DOI member for ports, which essentially is the airport and the harbours. And I've now taken on the responsibility for the highways division of DOI. So I've taken that delegation, which was vacant since Mrs. Lord-Brennan stepped back from the role earlier in the summer.
An obvious question, but what kinds of responsibilities does that give you now?
Well, it's full delegated responsibility in terms of overseeing the highways division and the governance around that, and essentially working with the minister to make sure we're pushing forward as strongly as we can on the highways front.
You already wear several hats. You've got some responsibility in the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture, chair of Isle of Man Meets. You also chair the Planning Committee.
Mm-hmm.
We've spoken previously about some conflicts you've had, especially with your responsibility for ports
mm-hmm.
and with planning.
Yeah.
Is that not only going to increase significantly with this new role, do you think?
So that was one of the things that we've checked out with the Attorney General's office and taken advice on, because when it was clear that the department needed to do something to put a member into the highways role, it wasn't sustainable for the minister to be having to manage that division himself, as well as all the breadth of responsibilities within the whole of DOI. And of course, it's very high profile. We only need to talk about things like the promenade scheme. It's massive challenges around DOI. So the preferred solution was for me to step into that additional role. But of course, the point you've made particularly around the planning dimension, because of course highways are a contributor to the planning process in terms of validating planning applications. So we've checked that out, and essentially it's very clear. We've made it very clear that any highway recommendations come from officer level. There's no political involvement in those in planning applications. So we've reinforced that within the department, and also to the planning team as well. So,
but even if there's no official conflict,
yeah,
there's still going to be a perceived conflict, isn't there, from the members of the public? Do you think?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because actually I've already got delegated responsibility for the planning function within DEFRA. So actually there's a lot of parallels. So in a planning decision, the officer comes forward with a recommendation, and then committee, which I chair, makes a decision on that. So there are times when I'm not accepting a recommendation from a planning officer, but that's not a conflict. That's just the process in action. It's very similar here, that the highways officers will put forward a response to an application. It will be considered by the planning officer, and that will inform the recommendation, but we're not bound by it. So it's a bit more complex than you'd ideally like, but we've had the legal advice. We know it's workable, and it was the best option that was available to the department.
You've mentioned the elephant in the room, which is the refurbishment works on Douglas Promenade.
Yep.
Is that now going to be your responsibility? Because previously the minister has said the buck stops with him, really, on that front. Is that sort of over to you now, do you think?
Well, no, the book, legally in the Isle of Man, the book always stops with the minister. There's an expression that the minister is the department, and in legal terms that's true. So, the minister isn't walking away from these things. It's not his style. He's a minister who wants to get things done, and actually you're seeing a huge amount of things going on in DOI, and perhaps that's part of the challenge that the department faces. So no, the minister's still got overall responsibility for the department, but effectively strengthening the team by me working more closely on the highways aspects. And there is a Douglas Promenade political steering group which the minister's put in place, which includes not only myself as a member for highways, but it also includes Department for Enterprise and Treasury representatives as well. So we've actually got a range of people supporting that Douglas Promenade project, because it is something that cuts across multiple departments. So hopefully my involvement provides an added dimension, a bit more strength to that. And it's about getting good outcomes for the people of the Isle of Man, and if I can do that, that's absolutely why I'm here.
We've heard the Enterprise Minister say that this national project of fairly unprecedented scale, certainly in recent memory anyway, is going to take up an awful lot of time from several departments. What assurances can you give to the rest of the Isle of Man that there's going to be equal coverage of your time and attention, I suppose?
Well, absolutely. That Douglas Prom is a major scheme, but there's so many other things going on, and that's the challenge. And last week in my own constituency of Ayre and Michael, there was the Kurt Michael presentation as to what the Department of Infrastructure was doing. There's obviously been quite a lot of talk very recently about schemes in, for example, Guernsey. There's a lot going on. It's a very busy department, and my job is to give that support to the and challenge to the officers, particularly the Director of Highways, Jeff Robinson, to make sure that we're looking at everything in the right manner, and actually give him that time, because realistically, that without a delegated member, that input was constrained. So I think the benefits will ironically perhaps come more on these other schemes than the prom, because the prom is very much front of mind for everybody anyway.
So a busy department, a busy division, and a busy role.
Yep.
Your words, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
2 years left to go of this administration.
Yep.
Is that a bit of a banana skin for you?
Well, I hope not. But I think I believe what the public deserves and what I think the public wants are people who will get stuck in and actually make things happen. And my commitment to the people of Ayre and Michael and to the island generally, when I got elected, was I would do as much as I possibly could to improve things for the island as a whole. I'm a team player, and I'm prepared to take on the difficult challenges. So, you mentioned a number of the roles already, and of course I've also got the children's champion role as well. I'm trying to wrestle with the Peel Silt issue. All these are difficult, time-consuming roles.
So what's in it for you?
It's actually making a difference to the Isle of Man. That's why I'm here. I've committed 5 years of my life to actually do this role. I was privileged to be elected by the people of Ayre and Michael, and at the end of the 5 years, I need to be able to look myself in the mirror and be satisfied with what I've delivered in that time. And that's about where is the Isle of Man. The reason I stood was the Isle of Man wasn't where I felt it should be in 2016. There's a lot of negativity around. There was a lot of things that weren't happening. We're actually making things happen here, but making things happen brings its own challenges, and you have to be prepared to get stuck in, work, be a team player, and just put in the best you possibly can. And that's my approach to life.
A complete tangent. I'm going to throw at you a press release from the UK from today. News Today reports that the UK Chancellor Sajid Javid will announce plans to spend $25 billion upgrading Britain's roads. Pretty significant infrastructure hoped across the water. Do you think there are calls for the same, obviously not to the same scale, but for the same sort of investment here?
I think infrastructure is so important to a modern economy, whether it's specifically roads or, in the UK case, there's been a lot of talk about the high-speed rail links, etc., etc. In the island's case, infrastructure absolutely underpins everything that happens on the island. So whether it's our roads, our ports connection, airports, we absolutely have to have the right infrastructure. Broadband, that's something that's very close to my heart, particularly in the rural areas where broadband coverage isn't good enough. If you create the right infrastructure, it gives you the foundation from which both society and the economy can flourish. So I do believe that we have to be prepared to invest in those areas, because that underpins everything that happens. And, what I've observed from a distance in the last couple of years is the department putting more emphasis on maintenance and really looking after the assets that we've got, and that's really, really important. It's not just about doing new things; it's about making sure you're looking after and maximising the life of the assets you already have. And there was a national infrastructure strategy that went through Tynwald a year, 18 months ago. Where everything the whole asset base was looked at. I think a growing economy, which is what we want. It brings challenges. We talk about the area plan for the East process at the moment, and more housing needs more infrastructure to support it, whether that be in the Manx Utilities camp in terms of water, electricity, etc., whether it be in DOI in terms of road access, education in terms of schools. It's a fallacy to think that you can just scale up the island's population without investing in the infrastructure. And I think that's a challenge that we've got, whilst at the same time maintaining our financial discipline, which obviously has been very much front of mind since probably 2008 or so.
Let's finish with Douglas Promenade, because it's been a particular point of frustration, I think, for lots of members of the public, and has caused a lot of inconvenience for commuters, for residents, for tourists, for business owners. Are you the man to save the day?
This is never about one individual. This is about a team. We've got some hugely capable people across government. It's about getting them to work together in a collaborative way, including with the contractor, because let's not forget this is being delivered by a very, very well regarded private sector contractor who won a tender process. It's about working with DOI, working with DFE and Treasury, and obviously you're aware of the scheme coming forward to support business that's been impacted. And trying to be as seamless and joined up as we possibly can. I mean, this is a major scheme. It's spread across one of the most significant parts of the island. It's actually a major highway as well. The number of vehicle movements on there, and it affects everyday life. So it was always going to be impactful. The question is how you react to that, and I think we've now got in place a better arrangement than perhaps it was at the start. And you could say,
has enough been done to mitigate the adverse impacts, do you think?
You can always do more, Dollin. I think the reality is that when things change, it always takes time for you to adapt to those things. So one of the key underlying factors has been what was found under the ground when it was opened up, and there'd been pilot drilling excavation done before they started, but that's effectively sampling, and actually it's only when you open up the whole thing. And these challenges aren't unique to the Isle of Man. I mean, there was something about in the UK about the French company that's developing a new nuclear plant, and they talk about an extra £3 billion last week, and it was all to do with the ground conditions once they'd actually started on site. So, I mean, clearly we've not got that scale of financial issue here, but we have got the same underlying point that is engineering projects are difficult, they're complex. This is uncovering infrastructure which was laid 100 years ago. There was no documentation of a lot of this stuff. There was things in the ground that nobody knew were there. There were other things that weren't where they should be. This pipe that should have been connected to other pipes and wasn't. That's the reality that you find in these sort of projects. And once you find a problem, you've got to adapt. So you can have the best plans in the world, but you find something you don't foresee. You have to then change how you're operating. And I think there's been a lot of that in the early stages of the project. I think we're in a better place now, and I am confident of a successful delivery of what will be a great asset to the island for the long term. It may take longer than people originally were hoping, and of course it has been disruptive. But I'm confident that the different departments are working together well. There's a support scheme being brought through Tynwald by the Enterprise Minister, which is very welcome. And I think there is a recognition that there are some consequences from how things have played out, and we need to deal with those things.